The whole system is spoiled. I mean, the whole system is rotten, it's corrupt, and the two parties that you're spoiling are part of the thing. So I would say, look, I'm nominated as an independent. I went through those hurdles. There were 4 independent candidates. Only one of us, me, made it on the ballot. The party's candidates made it through their system, and I'm a candidate for governor, and I've got claims to it. Like everybody else, most Mainers just want a government that functions and serves them and only them. And they want a governor who's relentlessly focused on getting results for them, not for propping up a corrupt and a system that only serves the people in power.
All right. On this segment, we got a pretty special guest. And I got a full disclosure. We try to be a neutral platform and everything. But, I always tell people, like, I don't even donate to candidates. I've kind of gotten out of that, even people I like, because I don't like getting into this stuff. But I don't know. I think it was because Caitlin gave me a call. And I respected that Rick was one of the, when it wasn't cool, was one of those people that were willing to go into the nonpartisan reform and support efforts that were good for voters, even if they weren't good for his party. I knew a little bit about Rick because of my compadre over here. Cara has always said positive things. But Rick Bennett is our guest today. He's an independent candidate for governor in Maine. So I'm going to get it started. I don't know if, Cara, you want to say anything, but we're talking to a former president of the Senate as a Republican, from going back 20 years, certainly as credentials. Obvious. I assume you're just getting painted as a undercover Republican is what they do. Why are you doing this? I'll start there.
Sure. Well, it's really great to be with you, Chad, and Cara. It's always great to be among people doing great work, trying to rescue our democracy. And that's really what it's all about, frankly. Our political system is fraught at best. We're in a real danger zone with respect to our republic. And I think we all need to do what we can to rescue us from where we've gotten. We've gotten to a very dark place. And, I came to the reluctant conclusion that the parties are a major contributor to where we are and to the dysfunction and the disillusionment and the disenfranchisement that so many people are feeling with government. And so, yes, after many years of public service in the legislature, I served 20, 30 years ago and was president of the Senate, climbed the ladder back then. And then I went into business and decided to run afresh just because our politics has gotten so bad. And I was reelected to the state Senate as a Republican. But over the last few years, I've seen it get worse and worse. And I've come to the conclusion that the parties are part of the problem. And so I decided to run as an independent, because I want to govern as an independent and return Maine to that tradition that we had for decades, where people have disagreements and sharp elbows, but we treat each other as neighbors, and we come together as a community of people, and we address the many issues that we're facing. People are struggling in Maine. Nearly half the families in Maine can no longer afford the basics. We've got an affordability crisis. It's terrible. And we need and our political system is just about pointing fingers and keeping us fighting with each other.
Yeah. So, you're talking about Maine. You got, a lot of people know of Angus King, right? You got streak of independence in Maine. We all know that. When we're sitting here with Cara, who, literally drove the train for ranked choice voting there and getting it off the ground. And I always get upset. People go, oh, well, ranked choice voting here or there. Like, it's different everywhere. One of the issues you're confronting is that, they have ranked choice voting in the primaries, but haven't gotten it in for the general election yet. You still have partisan primaries. So I'm sure they did their best to cut you out of the discussion until they absolutely have to, right? But I don't know, maybe Cara, you have a comment on this. At the end of the day, you're running a plurality election right now, right? You need to get a plurality of the vote in the general election. I don't really have a question coming out of that. Maybe Cara, you got something to say, since that's your stomping ground over there.
Yeah, my stomping ground of Maine. I can't imagine you going through this, Rick, to tell you the truth, because, the 10 years ago or whatever it was, 12 years ago, I was working on a 3-way race for governor in Maine. And every day that I would go to the office, they would say that the candidate that I was working for was going to spoil the election. And it drove me so crazy that I started doing research and came up with like, how do you get rid of this problem? And I literally did a search on the internet and discovered this thing called ranked choice voting and how it takes away the spoiler. And I thought, okay, so I don't want to do another race again, working for an independent in Maine where this is going to be the conversation. We need to be talking about the ideas, and we need to live in a system where the best idea has a chance. And we need to live in a system where the best candidate has a chance. And so that's sort of began my whole journey. And it wasn't about, trying to help one party or another party. It was just trying to like give people a choice that they didn't have. And, I'm sort of like, oh, I really wish we had it for the governor's race.
You brought this ranked choice voting stuff to Maine. Obviously, it hasn't reached the governor's office in the general election yet. There's been all kinds of fights about open primaries. You're running for office. You're the Mainer out there that's, didn't abandon Maine for San Francisco, Cara. So what is your solution for Maine? If you didn't have to run in this type of race, what would your solution be? And on top of that, why would it incentivize better leadership?
Well, let me just say outset, twice in my lifetime, Maine voters have chosen to elect under the current plurality system an independent for governor.
Yes.
And it's happened in people's life.
Angus and who else, Rick?
Jim Longley back in the
Right, Jim Longley, of course.
And, Angus was reelected. Jim Longley did not run for reelection. I think he would have won reelection. Angus was elected as an independent in 1994, was reelected in 1998. I served as president of the Senate when Angus King was governor as an independent. And I saw how he managed to do the work as an independent and be effective.
And you had power sharing in the Senate too, right? At that time, didn't you guys go back and forth?
Yeah, we had actually, interestingly, we had a tied Senate. We had an equal number of Republicans and Democrats, one independent in the Senate, and people thought that was going to fail. And we came up with a power sharing agreement, which got everybody's voice heard, was fully transparent, and we don't always agree, but at least we treat each other as like caring adults who really wanted to help be effective for the people we serve. And it worked really well. And so we've shown that it can work. We've shown that it can work with an independent governor. We've shown that Maine is a special place maybe this way. But I got to say, this whole question of the spoiler there's a thing embedded in there that I think we need to put out on the table. And that is spoiling for whom and for what, right? The whole system.
It depends.
The whole system is spoiled. I mean, the whole system is rotten. It's corrupt. And the two parties that you're spoiling are part of the thing. So I would say, look, I'm nominated as an independent. I went through those hurdles. There were 4 independent candidates. Only one of us, me, made it on the ballot. The party's candidates made it through their system. And I'm a candidate for governor, and I've got claims to it, like everybody else. In fact,
yes.
What I would point out is that early on in this race, I've been endorsed, and the endorsements keep coming from current and former elected leaders in Maine who have served in the legislature.
Who know you. They know you.
Republicans, Democrats, Independents, they do know me. They worked with me, but they also know that the system is not working, and they keep coming up to me. I see people all the time like, thank God you're running, because this system is not working for the people of Maine. And that's what we need to focus on, is that insiders get all worried about like the party politics and this is going to happen if that happens. Most Mainers just want a government that functions and serves them and only them. And they want a governor who's relentlessly focused on getting results for them, not for propping up a corrupt and a system that only serves the people in power.
So people probably get annoyed because Cara and I, like, these guys, all they talk about is ranked choice voting and open primary, blah, blah, blah. But you have Yeah, you have some good government reforms that are not ranked choice. Like, you talk about having an inspector general and ending the no bid contract system and stuff. So for the people, the average voter, like, what does that mean? Why is that so? Why would that be such a big deal for the everyday Mainer?
People know that we're not looking after the public purse. We're not looking after the taxpayers' money very well in Maine. We've had numerous reports. The auditor for the state came to my committee, the Government Oversight Committee, and presented this a very thick report about all of the violations of federal law that we were doing under our MaineCare system, the Medicaid system, as well as a lot of other flaws in internal controls. We've had a raft of no-bid contracts to large corporate players. The first thing people need to restore trust in government is know that their money is being stewarded well by the people in power. So I'm putting that front and center. I will have an inspector general's office as part of the governor's office. So any credible question or claim of malfeasance, of misspending, of errors of any size, that we will go in and investigate that immediately, real time, not wait for the annual report from the auditor, but go in and find out what's going on and fix it. I think it's basic stuff. And we're going to stop the no bid contracts. We're going to really attend to the public purse. Maine spending has increased by almost 80% in the last.
That's a lot.
Yeah, well in advance of inflation over the last 10 years. And it's people are shocked when I tell them this, but the reason for that is that, look, the executive branch got billions of dollars from the feds during COVID. They weren't looking at the current service as part of spending. And then the state legislature, because of partisan dysfunction, actually hasn't even had a public hearing on the budget in 6 years. So we don't know what we're spending money on, whether it's working or not. And we need to clean up that whole side of things. And so when I think about government reform, Chad, I agree. It includes election reform. It includes campaign finance reform, but it's also like, let's stop the misspending of the taxpayers' resources. Let's manage our state well. Let's respect the people who are working for the public, both in private agencies as contractors and health care providers, as well as state employees. They're the people getting the work done. They know what's working and what isn't working in state government, and we need to engage all of them in finding solutions so that we actually deliver the results for the people of Maine.
So, I think a lot of us are trying. I mean, California's budget, I think we might be a little worse than you in that regard. But I mean, whether it's Maine, California, everywhere else, I feel like the voters are kind of having the same senses of frustration, right? It really is a nonpartisan. So you're the first candidate I'm going to put on the spot to react to a couple pieces of legislation that have started trickling out in California. Well, one of them was just introduced the other day. Sean Griffiths wrote a great article on it. There's a group led by one of the leaders of the Problem Solvers Caucus of California, and it was a pretty simple amendment. It simply said the Office of the Secretary of State, which I think it's the same in Maine, who's the chief elections official, shall be a nonpartisan office. What's your reaction to that?
I think that's a great idea. I think we should have more nonpartisan public servants elected. In Maine, we have a very antiquated system, kind of missed the whole progressive era of the early 1900s, because we still have the state legislature elect our Secretary of State, the Attorney General, and the state treasurer. Which means that
we don't have an elected Attorney General.
I did not know that.
Which means that the best qualification for service is, guess what? Be a member,
be a good party. Be
a serving member of the legislature from the majority party. And that's what we've come to. So in Maine, I would say we have some more fundamental reforms first in terms of basic accountability to the voters with the Office of Secretary of State.
So speaking of the great progressive era, I feel like we're kind of going through one now, maybe in a complete, the progressive terminology has changed its connotations over the years. But when you're looking at, I say, voter-centric reform eras, right? I think we're in one where Maine has, in some regard, Maine has taken the lead. We're certainly not perfect, but thanks to people like Cara and yourself who stepped out of the partisan circle and said, here's something for the voters, have really pushed the ball for ranked choice voting a long ways in the global advancement of things like ranked choice voting, right?
Yes.
But also super PAC reform, Rick and I are both the interveners in a huge lawsuit that's going on right now where they just had arguments before the First Circuit Court of Appeals. The United States Federal Appeals Court is hearing our case, Rick. Let's talk a little bit about that.
You didn't disclose that conflict. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And also my husband has contributed money to Senator Bennett as well. So that is another conflict that I have. But yeah, so Rick and I, Democrat and Republican, I guess I'm NPP now, but we
Did you
have
register
banded
NPP?
And I'm an independent too.
Wow.
I did. Yeah, I did.
I didn't know.
In California, I mean, I didn't get to vote in the primary in Maine, so I voted here on June 2nd and didn't vote there because I really now I really did not want to have to vote for that Graham Plattner. I'm actually delighted that Troy Jackson is the Senate candidate now. So that's interesting. But anyway, let's go back to the super PACs, because you have basically Democrat, Republican, Independent as interveners in this lawsuit to try to limit super PACs in Maine. And we had you went to the argument, right? You went to the oral argument. I listened to it because I was out here, but it was pretty cool, right?
It was amazing. Neil Kochel did us a great service as the lawyer for the interveners, and he made a very compelling case. And I felt like the en-banc group of 3 justices were very attentive to what he had to say. The arguments from the other side were extraordinarily weak. Basically, they said
they were.
Corruption? There's no corruption going on in here. I mean, it was. They
said that with a straight face. There's no corruption, and they said. I'm sorry. They also said there's no appearance of corruption, which is even more insane.
Yeah. But here's what happened here in Maine. Maine has been a leader in campaign finance reform. We were one of the first states, if not the first state, to have a Clean Elections Act for public funding for state election candidates. I've always availed myself of that when I was serving in the legislative offices. We also, I led an effort the year before the super PAC reform measure to ban foreign governments from involvement in our elections. Believe it or not, this is a loophole that exists in law that the Federal Elections Commission said, oh, it's up to the states to do that. Well, we had hundreds of millions of dollars spent by foreign governments in our elections in Maine. And 86% of Maine voters supported that measure, which I chaired. And it was the highest percentage of anything ever on the Maine ballot in 2023. Of course, the foreign governments and all the people that benefit from the big spending have immediately sued the state for that bill, for that measure. And then the following year, Cara led the effort, which got this extraordinary measure passed by the Maine voters, 75% of Maine voters, but it was more votes than anything ever on a Maine ballot because it was in a presidential election year in 2024. An extraordinary measure, which effectively would ban super PACs by limiting their contributions that they could receive to $5,000, which is consonant with what it is for candidates for office. And so that measure passed.
And then we got sued again.
And immediately sued by an in-state super PAC that wants to continue this current corrupt system. And that's what we were defending before the First Circuit Court of Appeals.
All right. So
we're definitely on the side of the angels. on that one, but I mean, I
Lena's
just
giving
wonder
us
what
the
these
time
judges.
clock, and I know,
Oh,
I
Lena.
can already hear. I bet you Caitlin's probably giving you your time clock because I know you got a lot going on there. So, if you don't mind,
Rick, we love you.
Can I put
Thank you for
him on the
everything.
spot? One more thing. All right.
Sure.
Okay. So this is totally self-serving. Cara and I are two of a coalition in California who are working on an initiative in California, which I happen to think could be applicable in places like Maine. Who knows? Could be issues for something a candidate and for gubernatorial position, let's say, could propose if they did. But here's the entire initiative.
This is the initiative, Rick.
Constitutional amendment. Says no eligible voter shall be excluded from meaningful participation at any integral stage of any publicly funded election, including primary elections, on any basis, including political party preference. No private, corporate, political party, or associational right shall supersede this prohibition. That's the entirety of it. Hey, have any thoughts on that?
Listen, I think that we need to get the whole party thinking out of our government. And I mean, we built a whole statute around elections to prop up parties, and the founders would shake in their boots if they knew this. So I think this is a really important step forward. We need to.
We should try to open the primaries in
Absolutely.
And switch to a top 4, top 5 in Maine, Rick.
I think, if you do something similar to Alaska, right, which is
exactly
like really open primary process. If people want to associate themselves through political parties, that's their right, but we shouldn't bake it into our election system. So have open primaries and then have the ranked choice selection process, and then they advance to the general election with a certain number of candidates, 3, 4, whatever it is, and then have a ranked choice on that. I think that's a much better system. But we need to disentangle ourselves from these parties because they're dragging us down. They're standing in the way of getting real results for Maine people and people across this country because they're only interested, I call it the political industrial complex. They're only interested in keeping power and money to themselves, and there's a lot of money involved, not solving problems that people are facing at their kitchen table. So I applaud you for your initiative there.
Well, I happen to think the majority of Republicans and Democrats are actually on our side, and we need to provide them the political opportunity to do so because they don't like being hamstrung by the system either. But that's my personal opinion. But I really want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule. I know how busy it is. Like you said, there's few people like Rick Bennett who have the experience of how the system actually works and are willing to kind of set all that aside and do things the hard way because it's the right thing to do. That's our totally unbiased opinion. But thank you for coming on the show. Hopefully we can have you back. And then this is just especially get Cara from Maine and Rick running in Maine. This has been a fun experience. So thank you. Thanks, Caitlin, for lining this up. And thanks for Lena for putting up with it.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's great to be with you both.
Thank you and best of luck.
Thank you.
This is the Independent Voter Podcast, sponsored by the Independent Voter Project and produced by OLAS Media. Remember, you can always find the Independent Voter Podcast or the How It Really Works series at ivn.us. Follow and subscribe at olasmedia.com.
OLAS Media.